So, welcome to the townhouse, my haunted townhouse, built in 1626. And there are 4 rooms in this building. And the one we should talk about the most is the one upstairs, but unfortunately the one that we can't let you into because it is behind that door a stairwell leading up to the witches' prison, into which we managed to jam more than 2,000 people, if you can believe it. Next door, conveniently, to my left and to your right, is the courtroom. And behind me, in my other little gallery, is the tax and excise office. Now, you don't know this, but we're standing one level up, which means there's another room below us, and that's called the debtors' prison, into which I actually have a jail cell next to my workshop, which has its uses. So, which room should we go in now? The courtroom. Okay, follow me. Right. We are in the courtroom. This courtroom has been used almost continuously since 1626. At the moment, it's a beautiful little boutique, but in the past, it wasn't the most happiest of buildings. This is the room where witches were prosecuted, but people also prosecuted for, or charged or accused of, stealing and begging, adultery, or the most heinous of crimes, blasphemy, for which they would either be branded or dragged downstairs into the jail below. Worst case, of course, was the people prosecuted for witchcraft, for which that end was rather swift and gruesome, because they were then taken to the shoreline here, which is only a few hundred yards from where we stand, and then obviously finished off in the river. The room itself belies its gruesome past because it has a beautiful hand-painted medieval beam ceiling. There's several artefacts in the wall representing King Charles I behind me, who was born not far from here in Dunfermline Palace. To my left, we have a coat of arms representing the family of Bruce. Bruce is responsible for building the palace for which this village is famous for, which is used multiple times in Outlander. The Bruce's descendants still live here in the village, at the top of the hill, behind the abbey. And there's another plaque opposite here, built into the wall, to celebrate the fact that an industrialist in the 18th century paid off the village debts. So, the baillie, the person responsible for the prosecutions, would have sat in this room with just a few people. And when you have an opportunity to inspect this interior, you'll realise that the room is rather small. And it's small because you ain't getting a jury. The jury system was much too complicated for 17th century Scotland, would take far too long, and so we just didn't bother. You were probably guilty, brought in here, some papers were signed, and then you were summarily charged, prosecuted, and then dispatched. Welcome to the green room. This beautiful panelled interior covers up a medieval past, because this room used to look like the room next door, the courtroom. But in 1783, someone decided that the medieval interior needed an update, so that's what it got. The panels are oak. I believe they were painted white sometime in the 1950s, and then somebody decided to cover up the vandalism with a beautiful Georgian hint of green. Now, behind me, you'll see a door. The door doesn't lead anywhere. However, that hasn't stopped the ghosts from coming through the door and throwing my artwork off the wall. And that's happened a couple of times. And in actual fact, there have been quite a few hauntings in this building. Many people don't believe that they happened, but I can tell you, or can verify, that every single instance I'm about to tell you happened with other people present at the time. For example, I was standing at the door behind where you're looking at me from, talking to 2 people when both light switches turned off all by themselves and the room went into darkness. There was nobody else here. It was the middle of winter. It was a quiet winter's day. No tourists around. Damp, dreary, typically cold day in December. But we got a visitation by two of our friends from upstairs. What else? Oh yeah. One day I'm sitting in here with a colleague of mine. On a cold day we keep the door closed to keep the draft out. Joe and I heard the footsteps coming up the steps from outside, and we had the footsteps approach the door, which was closed. The door handle, so that you know, is worn out because the door is 250 years old. So we got into the habit of getting up, taking turns to open the door for arriving guests to invite them into the green room. Only on this occasion, when we heard the footsteps and the door handle started to turn, it was my turn to push it open and invite the people in. However, when I pushed the door open, as I saw the door handle turning, I pushed it to discover that I couldn't see anybody behind the door. So I turned around and looked at my friend, and she said exactly what I was thinking. There's nobody there, is there? And I said, no. What else? A few weeks ago, I had a stranger come in, and we were chatting in the hallway. A quiet man, thoughtful, decided that he wanted to tell me about all the ghosts he could see during his visitation here. And lo and behold, according to this gentleman, a man stood at my doorway in 16th century costume with a feathered hat on, while a lady or a girl upstairs in the witches' prison tugged at the chains, keeping her restrained before her prosecution. And lastly, he felt the presence of somebody getting tugged at by rope somewhere upstairs in the attic, probably getting pulled one direction or another in an attempt to extract a confession of witchcraft. Welcome to the haunted townhouse.